History has a terrifying habit of repeating itself without mercy or variation. 3 global superpowers have collapsed in the last 500 years, following the exact same script. Now, the US is next. In 1590, Spain controlled half the world's gold supply and dominated the oceans with an iron fist. By 1670, they were bankrupt, broken, and irrelevant on the world stage. Their dominance evaporated in a single lifetime. In 1914, Britain ruled the largest empire in human history, with the sun never setting on their territory. 40 years later, they were a secondary power begging America for loans just to keep the lights on. In 1991, the Soviet Union seemed invincible with thousands of nuclear weapons and a massive army. Yet, it vanished in just 900 days. It wasn't war that killed them, it was simple, cold economic math. These 3 empires collapsed following the exact same sequence of decisions. It is a 7-stage disease that infects superpowers, and the terrifying truth is that America has already completed stage 5. We are not approaching the disaster. We are living inside it right now. This is the story of how empires actually die. It is a warning that the math has finally caught up to us. Before we analyze the stages, you must understand what collapse actually looks like in the real world. It is not an explosion. It is a slow rot that suddenly accelerates when you least expect it. Collapse does not start with a foreign invasion or a lost war on the battlefield. It begins with economic exhaustion. The empire extends far beyond its ability to pay, yet it refuses to pull back. At first, the decline is invisible to the average citizen living their daily life. The currency still works at the store, the army still wins battles, the politicians still make grand promises of prosperity. But beneath the surface, the foundation is rotting away faster than anyone realizes. Resources are wasted on foreign wars, productive capacity shrinks. The smartest people quietly move their money elsewhere. Then comes the acceleration phase, where everything speeds up uncontrollably. Allies start to hedge their bets. Enemies begin to test the borders. The currency, once demanded by everyone, comes home. This is exactly what happened to Spain, Britain, and the USSR in the past. They all believed they were special. They all thought the basic laws of economics did not apply to them. Let's examine the first victim to understand the blueprint, the Spanish Empire. Following Columbus, Spain became the first true global superpower, seizing the vast silver mines of the Americas. By 1550, Spanish ships were hauling 200 tons of silver annually across the Atlantic. They controlled the global money supply. The Spanish real was the reserve currency of the entire planet. King Philip II was the richest man in history by a significant margin, but he made the fatal mistake of confusing money with wealth. He spent his fortune on global dominance and military expansion. This brings us to stage 1, military overextension. Spain fought wars on every front simultaneously without pause. They fought the Ottomans, the French, and the Dutch rebels all at once. By 1580, Spain had armies stationed on 4 different continents to maintain control. The cost was absolutely staggering. Half of the empire's total revenue was burned just to pay the soldiers. Stage 2 is currency debasement. Philip could not pay his bills with taxes alone. So he cheated the system. He began mixing cheap copper into the silver coins to stretch his funds. A coin that was once pure silver became 50% copper within a few years. Then it became 75% copper. The face value remained the same, but the real value had plummeted. Stage 3 is the debt spiral. Spain borrowed constantly from foreign bankers to fund their endless wars. They paid massive interest rates just to keep the lights on in Madrid and pay the troops. By 1557, Spain declared bankruptcy for the first time. They defaulted, restructured, and then borrowed again. They went bankrupt 4 times in just 40 years. The cycle was absolutely endless. Stage 4 is the loss of productive capacity. This is the most critical stage to understand. Spain had so much silver that they forgot how to actually make things for themselves anymore. Why grow food when you can import it from France? Why build ships when you can buy them? The Spanish elite considered work to be beneath them. They became a nation of consumers, not makers. The wealth flowed in from the Americas and flowed right out to France and Italy to pay for goods. Spain became a hollow conduit for money rather than a creator of real value. By 1600, Spain produced almost nothing domestically for its own people. They were entirely dependent on imports. When the silver mines finally slowed down, the entire system crashed into the dust. Stage 5 is social decay. With the economy failing, crime exploded in the streets of Madrid. Productive citizens fled the country. The best minds left for England and France to find work. Spain was left with nothing but bureaucrats, soldiers, and priests. By 1650, they lost the Netherlands. By 1700, the empire was a shell. They went from a superpower to a tourist destination. That is the blueprint for how a superpower dies. Now, let's jump forward 300 years to the British Empire. At its peak, Britain controlled 25% of the world's land surface. The pound sterling was the global reserve currency that everyone trusted. Every central bank held British bonds. London was the financial capital. They felt their dominance was absolutely eternal. But they were already walking the path of collapse without realizing it. Stage 1, military overextension. Britain had to defend India, Africa, and the Middle East. The cost was bleeding them dry. When World War I began, Britain faced an impossible choice. They could stay neutral or bankrupt the empire to win. They chose to fight, and it cost them their entire financial future. The war cost Britain $40 billion in borrowed money. They borrowed heavily from the United States. The creditor became the debtor. They won the war but lost their financial solvency. Stage 2, currency debasement. The war drained Britain's gold reserves entirely. By 1920, their vault was half empty. The pound sterling was losing its backing rapidly and visibly to the world. In 1931, Britain abandoned the gold standard completely to survive. The pound lost 25% of its value overnight. The world realized the king had no clothes and sold the pound. Stage 3 is the debt spiral. Britain never paid off the first war before the second one started. World War II cost another $100 billion in borrowed funds and supplies from America. By 1945, Britain owed more than its entire GDP to foreign nations. The war was won, but the empire was finished. They could no longer afford to project power across the oceans of the world. Stage 4, loss of empire. In 1947, Britain gave up India peacefully. It was the source of their wealth for centuries. Over the next decade, they lost almost everything else they owned. By 1970, the British Empire existed only in history books and museums. The pound crashed from $4 to $2. Today, it trades for just over $1 and change against the dollar. The global reserve currency became a regional curiosity that lost its power. Britain tried to maintain the pretense of power, but everyone knew the truth. The cycle had claimed them completely. Now, look at the Soviet Union for a modern example. After 1945, the USSR was a titan. They had nuclear weapons, massive influence, and a belief that they would bury American capitalism forever. For 40 years, they matched the West tank for tank and missile for missile. But beneath the armor, the economy was rotting. Stage 1, military overextension, ruined their future before it began. The Soviets spent 20% of their GDP on the military machine. They propped up regimes in Cuba, Vietnam, and Angola. They tried to match American reach with a fraction of the money. Stage 2 is economic stagnation. The Soviet economy stopped growing effectively in the 70s. Factories produced junk that nobody wanted. Farms failed to feed the people who worked them. By the 80s, the USSR was importing grain just to survive. A country with the best soil on earth could not feed itself because central planning destroyed all human incentives to produce. Stage 3 is currency collapse. The ruble was fake money with no value. Nobody outside the Iron Curtain accepted it. The government had to sell gold and oil just to buy basic imports. Stage 4 is the loss of control. In 1989, the Berlin Wall fell. Eastern Europe walked away from the Union. The strategic depth that the Soviets had bought with blood vanished instantly overnight. Stage 5 is complete collapse. On Christmas 1991, the Soviet Union ceased to exist forever. It took only 900 days from the first crack to the total dissolution of the entire state. There was no invasion and no great battle. The military simply could not be paid. The government could not function. A superpower with thousands of nukes died from a bank balance failure. The pattern is undeniable and historically consistent. Overextension leads to bad money. Bad money leads to debt. Debt leads to hollow production. And hollow production leads to sudden death. This brings us to the terrified present day. The United States is following this exact pattern step by step. We are checking off the boxes one by one like a suicide checklist for nations. Stage 1, military overextension. The U.S. has 750 bases in 80 countries. We are committed to defending NATO, Japan, Korea, and Israel all at the exact same time around the globe. Our military budget is nearing $1 trillion annually. Yet, our ships are aging and recruitment is down. We are stretched too thin to fight a two-front global war effectively anymore. If China moves on Taiwan while Russia pushes into Europe, we cannot stop both. We are just like Spain in 1580, fighting everywhere while the treasury drains to zero in the process. Stage 2, currency debasement. In 1971, we left the gold standard. Since 2020 alone, we have printed $6 trillion. The money supply has exploded upward vertically on the charts. The dollar has lost 98% of its value since 1971. We are not mixing copper into silver coins anymore. We are printing digits on a screen. The result is absolutely identical. Stage 3 is the debt spiral. The national debt is $36 trillion. That is 120% of our GDP. We are entering the mathematics of no return right now. Interest payments on our debt now cost more than our entire defense budget. We are borrowing money just to pay the interest on the money we borrowed yesterday to keep the lights on. This is the literal definition of a death spiral. Spain defaulted 4 times. Britain inflated their debt away. We are on the exact same trajectory with absolutely no exit plan in sight. Stage 4. Loss of productive capacity. America does not make things anymore. We design and finance, but the actual physical work happens overseas in Asia and Mexico, where labor is cheap. Our manufacturing base was gutted and shipped to China decades ago. We import $800 billion more than we export. We are dependent on our rivals for our daily survival. We need foreign supply chains for medicine, steel, and electronics. Just like Spain, we let the wealth flow out to buy goods we used to make for ourselves in our own factories. Stage 5 is social decay. You can see this with your own eyes every day. Trust in institutions has collapsed. Political polarization has paralyzed the entire government mechanism in Washington. Crime is rising in major cities across the nation. The drug crisis kills 100,000 people a year. The social fabric that holds a nation together is tearing apart at the seams. We have completed 5 of the 7 stages. Britain and the USSR collapsed shortly after reaching this point. Spain lingered longer, but never recovered its global power or its economic standing. We are not immune to this history. The laws of math do not care about American exceptionalism. You cannot spend more than you make forever. Eventually, the bill comes due for everyone. So, what comes next for us? Stage 6 is the loss of reserve currency status. This is the tipping point. It is when the world decides they no longer need the dollar for trade. We are seeing the early signs right now. The BRICS nations are building an alternative system. Central banks are buying gold at record rates to hedge against our debt and our instability. Saudi Arabia is now open to trading oil in Chinese yuan. If the petrodollar dies, the demand for US dollars evaporates. The currency will come flooding back home to American shores. When those dollars return, inflation will not be temporary. It will be permanent and massive. The privilege of printing money to pay for imports will disappear forever from our economy. Stage 7 is collapse. This is not a slow decline. It is a sudden implosion. It happens when the government loses the ability to fund its basic operations and its promises. It ends with a currency crisis that triggers a political crisis. Overnight, the superpower becomes a cautionary tale. The wealth of the middle class is wiped out in a matter of months. The USSR went from superpower to zero in 3 years. Britain lost its empire in 20 years. The speed of the collapse always surprises the people living through it at the time. Everyone thinks it cannot happen here. They think we are too big to fail. They think the dollar is invincible. But history is a graveyard of invincible empires that thought the same thing. We have accelerated every stage since 2020. We printed more, borrowed more, and divided ourselves more. We are sprinting toward the cliff edge with our eyes closed and the pedal down. The most dangerous phrase in economics is, "This time is different." It is never different. The variables change, but the equation always remains exactly the same throughout history. Spain had silver mines. Britain had global trade. The US has the dollar. But the mechanism of failure is identical. You cannot consume more than you produce indefinitely without consequence. The terrifying reality is that we have no political will to fix it. Cutting spending is political suicide. Raising taxes is political suicide. So we keep printing money to delay the pain. We have chosen the path of least resistance every time. We will print money until the currency breaks. It is the only option left for a government addicted to spending money it doesn't have. If we are at stage 5, we might have 10 years left, or we might have 5. The timeline depends on how fast the rest of the world abandons the dollar for good. When stage 6 hits, life changes overnight for everyone. Imports become unaffordable. The standard of living plummets. The government will implement capital controls to trap your money inside. This is not doom-mongering for clicks. This is historical analysis. If you drive a car off a cliff, gravity takes over. We drove off the cliff years ago. We are just falling now. Can we turn it around? Theoretically, yes. We could slash spending, balance the budget, and rebuild our industry. But that would require massive immediate pain for every single American. No politician will run on a platform of austerity and hardship. They will promise free money until the very end. That is why the pattern is so hard to break in a democracy. The Spanish crown promised prosperity while they debased the currency. The Soviet leaders promised victory while their economy starved. Our leaders are doing the exact same thing today. You need to understand that the system is not designed to save you. It is designed to sustain itself for one more election cycle. You are truly on your own in this mess. This is why you must prepare yourself. You cannot rely on a pension paid in a dying currency. You cannot rely on a government that is technically insolvent right now. You must look at history to see what survived. Hard assets survived. Productive land survived. Gold and silver survived while the paper currencies burned to ash in the streets. The people who prospered during the British collapse were those who held assets outside the pound. The Russians who survived 1991 were those who had real skills and real assets. Do not keep all your wealth in the system that is failing. Diversify your exposure now. Understand that the dollars in your bank account are a depreciating asset that is losing value. The collapse of the US empire will be the biggest financial event of our lives. It will reshape the geopolitical map. It will change the flow of global capital for the next century. It represents a massive danger, but also a massive opportunity. Wealth is never destroyed. It is merely transferred. It moves from the unprepared to the prepared during these transitions. Spain's wealth moved to England. England's wealth moved to America. America's wealth is preparing to move again. You need to position yourself to be on the receiving end of this transfer. Watch the BRICS nations closely. Watch the gold purchases of central banks. These are the signals that stage 6 is approaching. Do not ignore the flashing red lights on the dashboard. We are living through history right now. It feels normal because it happens day by day. But when you zoom out, the trajectory is terrifyingly clear and impossible to deny. The 7 stages are a warning from the ghosts of empires past. They are screaming at us to turn back. But we are pressing the accelerator closer to the floor with every decision. The collapse of the Soviet Union seemed impossible until the day it happened. The fall of the British pound was unthinkable until the morning it crashed and burned. We are not special. We are just the latest iteration of the cycle. The math always wins in the end. The debt always comes due. The reality always beats the expectation. If this analysis opened your eyes to the sequence we are in, you need to pay attention. The next few years will determine who survives the transition financially and who gets wiped out. The answers are not hiding in the future. They are written in the history books. We just have to be brave enough to read them and accept what they say about our future. Subscribe to the channel if you want to track these stages in real time. I will show you exactly where to look as the pattern plays out. Do not be caught sleeping when it happens.